as we get into this information war about who's going to control the media as these weather events amplify and your crop losses amplify and your life is affected.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum, and the media overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine.
And this whole thing about the whole global warming debate starting to fall apart. And once we really do start to get record snows in July, I hope that it starts to wake people up, that we need to start questioning what's going on in the news media, the information they're feeding us. And I want to drum this back in as this case in point about the Arctic sea ice. Media has been pushing since the beginning of the year that it's really going low and it's super warm up there. That was because a jet stream got pushed up. That, again, this comes back to the whole wandering, the magnetosphere getting so weak that polar jets can wander and bring, other jet stream flows that normally don't move into new places on the planet. So where there would be a blocking jet that should limit the heat, let's say down somewhere south of the UK or south of England down that way, that'll be allowed to extend all the way up into Greenland now. Another, 2,000 miles north, 2,500 miles north. We'll see these shifts all over the place. Now we're really starting to, this is the first year, I'm telling you, pay very close attention to what's going on with our crops this year. These weather fronts are ferocious. Now, if you didn't see the super freeze in Australia, and what I mean by that is how far the frost line extended north. And remember, down in Australia, we're coming off the South Pole, so you need to come north up to the equator. And here in the North Pole, we come south down to the equator. Australia, the frost line went up to Alice Springs and further north, which is like 1,500 miles from Papua New Guinea and the equator. So that frost event took frost to within 1,500 miles of the equator in Australia. This is unprecedented. Well, this one was so much, it took me 3 whole videos to put together all the stuff that happened during this event down there. Record snow, record cold, the frost up to within 1,500 miles of the equator, Arctic sea ice expanding, record floods in New Zealand, record snow in Tasmania, record wind, crop losses, damage in West Australia, damage in the crop. Look for huge losses in Australia. Oh my. Some people are saying they're going to lose 70% of their harvest. Not only the wind, but the hail, the snow, the frost, and the cold temperatures. And apparently an enormous amount of fields just got wiped out. This year, this winter, January, February, and it's planned and predicted to get colder as we enter the grand solar minimum here. It's just getting more intense every year. The cold's getting more intense. The winter's staying around longer. The periphery season of what is now considered spring has been pushed back a whole month. The weather fronts that are colliding with the cold in the air are just, the hail size is increasing as these wind fronts collide with each other. These new jet streams in the not normal places are creating ferocious updrafts and ferocious weather fronts as they come through. It's almost like every single storm front passing through now is 70-mile-an-hour winds with pounding baseball-sized hail, pool ball-sized hail, just smashing everything in its path. And I encourage you to look at, I think it was Pennsylvania and Kentucky. These are 2 states in the United States, if you're a foreign listener. Kentucky and Pennsylvania, they had this weather front that went through, and you should see the damage to the homes. I can't quite describe it. That you just have to almost see the images to see what I'm talking about here. So they have this vinyl replacement siding, which is an energy efficient, like outside exterior for your home, and then the insulation's on the inside. It cuts your electricity bills at least 80% for heating and cooling because it retains that much in the insulation barrier. So this vinyl replacement siding for the side of older homes, and a lot of even newer homes have it. A lot of apartment complexes have it. You know, it's just a great way to insulate. It's weather resistant, well, to some degree, except for hail. So let's come back to what you're looking at on the screen. The hail was so big that it was bouncing when it hit the ground and then bounced up off the ground and smashed on the side of people's homes. Now, it was bouncing off the ground 6 feet, 2.5 meters up into the air. And when you look inside of these homes, it looked like somebody took a machine gun and just blasted the side of it for 5 minutes. And there was more areas missing than there were actually areas of the vinyl replacement siding up there on the home. And all the windows were shattered out. And the roofs were damaged where you could actually see where the tiles were ripped off. Holes in the tiles, just entire areas of the roof completely gone in terms of the outer layer, and even dents into the wood after the tiles were stripped off. Dent, you could see it looked like somebody threw a cue ball as hard as they could or fired it out of a cannon onto the roof there and left these dent marks all over the place. Now, you can only imagine what you saw with the damage on the cars, too. It was like hundreds of thousands of automobiles with back windows, front windshields completely shattered. And if they weren't shattered, they had multiple holes going through where you could see the size of the hail that went through and created that hole in the windshield. Same size. Looking at something like a nice size apple, cue ball, baseball, something like cricket ball, depending where you're from. This is the new normal. Crops can't handle that. This is why we're starting to get losses in the fields, because when the wind comes, okay, if they're small and they're just seedlings coming out and just getting into what sprouts and you know, grasses coming out, like wheatgrass coming out, 100-mile-an-hour wind, it'll bounce back from that. If your stalks are like a foot or two tall and you have a 100-mile-an-hour wind, it's broken. It don't come back. Sorry, doesn't work like that. Anything that was bent over that wasn't actually snapped on the stem, if it does come back, it's not going to grow as well. And anything that was damaged with the cold and like these anomalous frost events, the yield coming off the head is going to be much smaller in terms of the kernel size as well. I'm talking about wheat here, corn as well. We're starting to see all of these changes coming, and the media is now flipping into more of a defensive mode.